The world is moving fast. People hurry past each other, eyes locked on glowing screens, rushing to the next meeting, the next train, the next obligation. A young man scrolls through endless updates, his thumb moving almost mechanically. A woman sits in traffic, staring through the windshield as if her body is present, but her mind is somewhere else entirely. In the soft light of a late-night office, a figure leans over a keyboard, typing with the dull rhythm of someone who has done this 1,000 times before. But if you look closely, closer than most people ever dare, you notice something strange. For just a moment, it's as if their faces shift. A thin, translucent mask appears, clinging to their skin, then fades away. And you realize this mask is not some strange trick of the light. It's something they've worn for years, so long, they've forgotten it's even there. What if the life you're living right now is not truly yours? What if the decisions you've made, the dreams you've chased, even the things you say you want, are not born from the deepest part of you, but handed to you by someone else? Parents, teachers, friends, culture, 1,000 invisible voices shaping you without your consent. We like to believe we know who we are, that we are the authors of our own lives. But Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists in history, believed something far more unsettling, that most people never truly meet their real self. They spend their entire lives playing a role in someone else's script. They wear the mask so long, they start to believe it is their face. But Jung also discovered something extraordinary. There is a way to step behind that mask, to confront the parts of yourself you've hidden, and to uncover something far more authentic, far more powerful than the image you've been showing to the world. In this video, we go deep into Jung's hidden teachings, why so many people feel lost without understanding why, and how you can break the invisible chains that have shaped you since birth. By the end of this journey, you may never look at yourself the same way again. From the moment you entered this world, a process began. You were given a name before you could speak, clothes before you could choose, words before you could decide what they meant to you. As a child, you absorbed the rules, not because you understood them, but because you learned quickly that breaking them brought discomfort and following them brought approval. They told you what was good and what was bad, what was realistic, what was acceptable. Maybe you were praised for being quiet or scolded for being too loud. Maybe you learned that some emotions, anger, sadness, even joy, were too much and needed to be hidden away. And so, piece by piece, without even realizing it, you began to build your mask. Carl Jung called this mask the persona, the version of yourself you present to the world. It's not inherently bad. The persona helps you fit in, navigate society, and protect yourself from judgment. But there's a hidden cost. The more you identify with the mask, the further you drift from your true self. Over time, the line between the two blurs, until you can't tell where the mask ends and you begin. And here's the unsettling truth. Most people never notice. They go through life thinking, this is just who I am. But deep beneath the surface, there's a quiet unrest, a faint whisper that something is missing, that the life they are living, no matter how comfortable or successful, is not entirely their own. Think about it. Have you ever done everything right, only to feel strangely empty afterward? Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered, is this really me, or am I just playing the role I was told to play? Jung believed that this disconnection from the self is one of the greatest sources of human suffering. And yet, hidden within that discomfort is the first spark of freedom, because the moment you realize the mask exists, you have a choice. The question is, will you keep wearing it, or will you dare to find out what lies beneath? If the persona is the face you show the world, then the shadow is everything you've been told to hide. It's the part of you that holds your forbidden emotions, your unspoken desires, the thoughts you'd never admit out loud. But it's not just darkness. It also contains your untapped strengths, the sides of you you've been too afraid to express. From childhood, you were taught that certain parts of yourself were wrong. Maybe it was your anger, your sensitivity, your ambition, or even your creativity. These parts didn't vanish when you hid them. They simply moved into the shadows, waiting. Jung warned that the shadow doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. Instead, it moves beneath the surface, shaping your choices in ways you may not even see. Sometimes it shows up as an intense dislike for someone else. You notice a quality in them that irritates you, but you can't quite explain why. Other times, it appears in sudden bursts, an overreaction to a small event, a decision you regret but can't fully understand. Why does this happen? Because the traits you reject in yourself don't go away. They wait in the dark, looking for a way to be acknowledged. And when you refuse to look at them directly, they appear in your life sideways, through projection, self-sabotage, and unconscious habits. But here's the paradox. The shadow is not your enemy. In fact, Jung believed it holds the key to becoming whole. Because the very qualities you've been avoiding, the ones you've been taught to suppress, are often the missing pieces of your true self. Imagine for a moment facing those parts of yourself without fear, seeing your anger not as a flaw, but as a signal for where boundaries have been crossed, recognizing that your vulnerability is not weakness, but the gateway to deeper connection. Understanding that the traits you envy or despise in others might be the very ones you need to reclaim in yourself. Integrating the shadow is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming complete. And the journey to your real self cannot begin until you're willing to turn toward the parts of you've been running from. Most people never take this journey, not because they don't want to, but because facing yourself is uncomfortable, painful even. It asks you to hold a mirror up to the parts of you've been taught to fear, and it demands that you question everything you thought you knew about who you are. So instead, we distract ourselves. We fill every quiet moment with noise, scrolling through feeds, watching another episode, adding more work to the to-do list. We convince ourselves we're just busy, but the truth is we're avoiding. Avoiding the silence, avoiding the stillness, avoiding that small, persistent voice inside that says something isn't right. But avoidance has a cost. It shows up as the quiet anxiety that never really goes away, as relationships that feel hollow, no matter how long they last, as self-sabotage that keeps you from taking the opportunities you secretly dream about. Take the fear of rejection, for example. On the surface, it seems simple. Nobody likes being judged or abandoned. But Jung would tell you to look deeper. Where did that fear begin? Was it a parent who only gave love when you behaved a certain way? A childhood moment where you felt invisible? That fear becomes part of the shadow, and until it's acknowledged, it controls you from the background, shaping every decision you make. Here's the shift. Once you face these hidden parts of yourself, they lose their power. Imagine what it would feel like to speak your mind without worrying about who might disagree. To make choices not out of fear, but out of what feels true to you. To stop performing for approval and start living from a place of authenticity. This is why most people never truly find themselves. Not because the path is impossible, but because it asks for something rare, the courage to be alone with your own truth. Carl Jung had a name for the process of becoming your true self: individuation. It's not about building a new identity or inventing some better version of yourself. It's about peeling back the layers, integrating every part of you, both the ones you're proud of and the ones you've hidden. It's about becoming whole. Individuation begins with awareness. The moment you catch yourself reacting in a way you don't understand and ask, why? You've taken the first step. The moment you question a belief you've carried your whole life and wonder, where did this come from? You've stepped onto the path. Jung believed the unconscious mind is always speaking to us, but most of us don't know how to listen. It speaks through patterns in our lives, through emotions that don't make sense, and, perhaps most vividly, through dreams. In dreams, the mask slips. Symbols rise from the depths, carrying messages we can't always put into words. Jung saw dreams not as random, but as letters from the self to the self. He also believed in the power of creative expression, not for art's sake, but as a way of speaking the language of the unconscious. Writing, painting, music. Even if no one else ever sees it, these acts bypass the rational mind and bring buried truths into the light. But individuation requires something more than awareness and creativity. It asks for honesty, the kind that can be uncomfortable, even painful. You have to be willing to look at your contradictions, to admit the ways you've been complicit in your own suffering, to accept that the traits you've denied might hold a kind of wisdom you've never tapped into. And here's the paradox. When you embrace all of who you are, the light and the dark, the strong and the vulnerable, you don't become fragmented. You become unified. Most people live as strangers to themselves. But individuation is the moment you come home. Jung discovered that the forces shaping us aren't just personal, they're ancient. Beneath your individual story lies something deeper: archetypes, universal patterns of human thought and behavior, inherited through what Jung called the collective unconscious. These are not just ideas, they are living forces inside you, shaping the way you think, feel, and act. You've met them before, though you may not have noticed. The hero, the part of you that longs to rise to a challenge, to prove yourself, to grow stronger through trial. The mentor, the inner voice of wisdom, sometimes your own, sometimes borrowed from those who've guided you. The shadow, the adversary within, holding the fears and weaknesses you must confront before you can grow. The innocent, the pure, hopeful part of you that still believes in wonder. You see these characters in myths, films, and stories passed down through generations, not because storytellers copy each other, but because these figures are embedded in all of us. They are the language of the human soul, and they are not just abstract symbols, they are alive in your daily life. When you felt the urge to pursue something bold, despite the odds, that was your hero speaking. When you've sabotaged your own progress out of fear, that was your shadow. When you've ignored your intuition or dismissed a gut feeling, that might have been your neglected anima or animus calling for balance. The anima and animus were two of Jung's most fascinating archetypes. He believed every man carries a hidden feminine side, the anima, representing intuition, emotion, and creativity, and every woman carries a hidden masculine side, the animus, representing logic, assertiveness, and structure. These aren't about gender, they're about balance. When these inner energies are denied, we become lopsided. A man who rejects his anima may struggle to connect emotionally, fearing vulnerability. A woman who rejects her animus may hold back her voice, doubting her right to lead or assert herself. But when these forces are embraced and integrated, they become sources of immense strength. And this is the deeper truth. To find yourself, you must embrace all of yourself, not just the parts you like, but the ones you've hidden, denied, or misunderstood. Individuation isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. Most people believe they are a fixed identity, one continuous self moving through time, shaped by memories and experiences. But Jung, along with many great philosophers and mystics, saw something radically different. The self is not static. It is fluid, expansive, far more vast than the narrow image we carry in our minds. What if the you identify with right now is only a fragment? What if the person you think you are, your name, your job, your personality, is just one expression of something much larger? Jung called this larger truth the self, not the small, ego-driven self that clings to labels, but the totality of who you are. And here's the unsettling part. Everything you've believed yourself to be, your fears, your limitations, even the stories you tell yourself about what's possible, are not the whole truth. They're just the mask the ego wears to keep you feeling safe. The ego is not your enemy. It serves a purpose. It helps you navigate daily life, make decisions, and protect yourself. But it also builds walls. It defines rigid borders. It tells you, this is who I am, and this is who I am not. In doing so, it keeps you from seeing the infinite possibilities of what you could become. Imagine for a moment that your identity is not a solid block, but a river, flowing, changing, shaped by countless streams that have been merging for generations. You are not an isolated individual moving through life. You are a vast field of consciousness, carrying within you the wisdom of your ancestors, the imprints of every moment you've lived, and the potential for transformation beyond imagination. The greatest obstacle to finding yourself is not fear. It's not doubt. It's not even the mask you wear. It's the belief that you are only the mask, that the fragment is all there is. The moment you see through that illusion, the ground beneath you shifts. You begin to sense something deeper, something that was always there, waiting for you to remember. If the self you've been living as is only a fragment, then the question becomes, how do you step beyond it? How do you move from the mask, the persona, into the vast wholeness of who you truly are? Jung's answer wasn't a quick fix. It wasn't about adopting a new label or changing your outer life overnight. It was about entering into a process, a way of living, that allows the deeper self to emerge. First, you must embrace the unknown. The unknown terrifies the ego because it represents uncertainty, loss of control. But it is also the only place growth can happen. When you stop resisting it, When you lean into it with curiosity instead of fear, you begin to discover possibilities you couldn't see before. Second, release your attachment to labels. You are not just your name, not just your job title, not just your history. Every label you cling to is a wall that keeps you from expanding. When you loosen your grip on them, you create space for something greater to emerge. Third, listen to the unconscious. Your dreams, your instincts, those sudden feelings you can't explain, these are not random. They're messages from the deeper self, guiding you toward balance and integration. Pay attention to the patterns. Notice the synchronicities. Write them down. Treat them as signposts on your journey. Finally, surrender to the process. Finding yourself isn't a box you check off. It's not a final destination. It's an unfolding, layer after layer, year after year. There will be moments of clarity and moments of confusion. Moments where you feel whole and moments where you feel lost again. That's not failure. That's the nature of becoming. And maybe the most important truth of all is this: you were never really lost. The self you've been searching for has been here the whole time, quietly waiting beneath the noise, beneath the roles, beneath the fear. All you have to do is remember. So now, the choice is yours. You can keep living as the fragment, moving through life behind the mask, defined by the labels and fears you inherited. Or you can step into the unknown, into the work of peeling back every layer until you meet the one person you've been searching for all along, yourself. This is not an easy path. It asks for courage, honesty, and a willingness to face the parts of you you've been avoiding for years. But it's also the most rewarding path you will ever take, because it leads to the only life that is truly yours. You won't arrive there all at once. There is no finish line, no moment when you suddenly become your true self forever. Instead, it's a continual unfolding. Each step, each insight, each truth you uncover brings you closer to a life lived in alignment, with nothing to hide and nothing to prove. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." The world outside will always offer you another distraction, another mask to wear, another role to play. But if you turn inward, if you dare to explore the depths of your own mind, you will awaken to a freedom that no one can give you and no one can take away. Life does not truly begin until you find yourself. And now, you know the way.